customization around input.
Well, hello everyone. Good morning. This third day at the Digital Hollywood. Can you guys hear me? Okay. We have a panel that's going to be talking about how do we fund the augmented reality and virtual reality marketplace today, and we have some major investors in the space and strategic investors in the space, which is quite exciting, as well as a CEO of one of the leading edge companies in the space. And as we are here today, I spent a day at the conference yesterday listening to the VR and AR panels, and it's quite fascinating what's possible today, and what's possible in the near future. And with that, I'm going to start introducing the panelists who are going to address this in much more breadth and depth than I just did. So Scott Levine, who heads up Time Warner Investments. Hello, Scott. Thanks a lot. That's our tone to introduce the next panelist. So go ahead.
I'll introduce myself.
Scott, yes. So tell us a little bit about you and the investments. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, clearly neither AR nor VR is working in this room yet.
I'll wait for it.
Nor AV. Good to go? Thanks. Okay.
All right. Sorry for that, everybody. I'm Scott Levine with Time Warner Investments. We're the strategic venture group for Time Warner, Inc. As you may know, Time Warner owns Warner Brothers and HBO and Turner. And we make investments that we think would be a good financial investment, but also of interest to any of our divisions. Could they be an operating partner at some point in the future? Is this a business that we think is interesting to our core lines of businesses?
So at the corporate level, is there a fund that's allocated to investments, or is it done sort of from the corporation?
Right, so we invest directly from the balance sheet, of Time Warner.
And that's quite a large balance sheet. Okay, thank you, Scott. Sim Blostein, who's the partner at Bertelsmann Digital Media Investments. Tell us a little bit about how that's set up.
Sure, so basically, is this? No. All right, I'll use, if you can't hear me, let me know.
Use that volume increase button that you
right,
have.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, there you go. Just in time. I'll make my intro longer so you can sit down. So Sim Blostein, mainly ditto. I'm a partner at the very similar venture arm that Bertelsmann has. For those of you not familiar, Bertelsmann is Europe's largest media company, and our assets include the RTL Group, which is the largest broadcaster over there, Fremantle, Penguin Random House, the book company, as well as Gruner & Jahr, one of the largest magazine groups over there. And so similarly, we focus on early stage investments in technology companies that we believe we can add strategic value to and be a smarter investor. And I'm not actually here. I am a new form of virtual reality telepresence, so feel free to just walk right through me.
Or talk through you.
Is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Hi guys, I'm Sonny.
This is a guy we just found at the corner here, and we brought him in.
My name's Sonny Dillon. I'm a principal and co-founder at Signia Venture Partners, an early stage fund in Menlo Park in San Francisco. The fund is focused on seed and Series A investments, so we invest about $500K to $3 million for an initial investment. Areas that I cover are augmented and virtual and mixed reality, where gaming, not so much mobile anymore, more PC, esports, e-commerce and consumer mobile apps. Our fund we're into our second fund now, and we're backed by a couple of strategic entertainment companies here in LA, and by a Chinese internet company alongside more traditional LPs.
Will we name any of them, Sonny?
We're not supposed to.
Okay, cool. I'm just asking. Okay. We have Richard Yan, who's the Managing Director of Private Equity for Saban. Tell us a little bit more about.
So hi, I'm Richard Yan with Saban Capital Group. We're a private equity firm out of Century City, founded in 2001. We invest broadly across the media, entertainment, telecom, and digital media sectors. We're a family office for media billionaire Haim Saban. He had a several-decade track record in the media space, culminating in the sale of Fox Family for over $5 billion in 2001. We're lead investors in Univision, where Haim Saban's the chairman. formerly were owners of ProSieben, the largest television broadcaster in Germany. I focus on digital media and consumer internet investments broadly, more in the growth and pre-IPO stage, so companies generating solid revenue and on a pretty strong upward trajectory. We're pretty broad from a sector standpoint, but more in the B2C area, given our media background, whether that's online video, e-commerce, online vertical media, and certainly we've looked at opportunities in virtual reality and augmented reality as well, and happy to chat about that.
Okay, and then everyone on this panel will actually invest in Radio, right? Which is Alex Rosenfeld is the CEO of a company called Radio, which does both applications with headsets and that are out in the market, as well as has the biggest portal of virtual reality video.
Yep.
Is that accurate?
That's pretty accurate,
All right.
yeah. So I'm the one, I guess, non-investor on the panel today. I was a media investor in a past life, though. So, but I'm currently founder and CEO of Radio. And we're a leading immersive video platform for virtual reality. So we currently have about 2,500 videos on our platform across about 500 publishers, and that's growing rapidly. We have apps across web, mobile, and VR. On VR, we're currently live on the Samsung Gear VR and working very closely with guys like Sony and HTC and Oculus, of course, to be on all those headsets at launch.
Fantastic. And then Ankur Prakash and I go way back to the beginning of this year when he spoke at Always On Summit. He runs Liberty Global's investments, and that group has been around for about a few years. And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Ankur Prakash. I run Liberty Global's venture investment group. So Liberty Global is the largest cable operator outside of North America. It's the easiest way to think of us is that we're the Comcast of Europe. So yeah, we are. We're across 12 countries. We're almost the same size as Comcast, but we don't operate under the Liberty Global names. Like Comcast is a consumer brand. We have individual brands in different countries. 5 prominent brands, so like Virgin Media, Unity Media in Germany, Ziggo. So pretty large company. I work for the venture investments group, and we are kind of, we're a strategic investor. We invest in technologies and products that are relevant to the overall cable and media space. We're an investment fund. We're off the balance sheet. We'll invest between $3 to $5 million in any company, and of course support the company through the growth.
So you have access to corporate money as well.
Yeah, typically that's what we like to do when we do make an investment. We have a pretty good idea that in the next 2 to 3 years we're going to take the products into our footprint in Europe.
Interesting. So in terms of just show of hands, how many people in the audience are from the media companies and technology companies? How many people are in the investment business? How many people are raising money? Okay, so it's kind of good cross-section of a little bit of everything. So with the, virtual reality projected to be about a $30 billion market by DigiCapital by 2020. It's really closed and fully immersive digital environment where VR puts users inside a virtual world. Augmented reality projected to be $120 billion by 2020 by DigiCapital, where it's an open and partially immersive digital media environment, and the AR puts virtual things into the real world. So I want to ask you guys, are you mostly looking at virtual reality or augmented reality as described by these definitions? Or is it something new that's merged between the two?
I'll start. I think there are a lot more virtual reality companies out there now than augmented or mixed reality companies. So by definition, we've been spending more time looking in the VR world. There are some very interesting AR companies out there. Not as many investment opportunities, but we're still, as a company, we're certainly interested in looking at both forms. A lot of people speculate, in the next 3 to 5 years, more the market will move to AR than to VR. People would want the more open ability to see the world around them, augmented by other content. Computationally, it's very difficult to get there right now. Sure. But But at least for the near term, there are a lot of great VR opportunities.
So would you also say maybe that's because of the media focus that VR is somewhat appealing as it's applied to games and possibly entertainment?
Well, I think there's interesting entertainment and gaming applications in AR as well. I just think it's early on, so we haven't seen as many.
Great. That's a really good piece of information.
Yeah, I would add, and I think this is an unfortunate thing about venture capital investing. AR had sort of a boom after the iPhone in the late 2000 odds, so 08, 09, 10. There were probably then as many companies with AR in their name as are now VR. And so there's a little bit of a stigma, I think, that the augmented reality space has to overcome, probably because a lot of the promise and excitement just never lived up to the hype. Whereas, the hype in VR is probably a lot fresher, and so we haven't yet gotten the hangover from virtual reality investing.
We think it'll work.
I think
go ahead.
similarly, a funny quip is the number of companies that now are VR companies. If you took a pencil eraser and you just rubbed out the last few letters, it would say 3D there. So a lot of companies are still doing, a lot of companies have moved from 3D as it being not a terribly successful medium to VR as being the sexy thing to raise money off of these days.
Interesting.
Well, and let's hope that the VR world is more successful than 3D was as a format.
3D's been around for, 2 or 3 decades, and for a while there, it was like if you're a 3D company, there was just no way to get to market until, of course, the movies became 3D and their educational applications, et cetera, and now a lot more with the headsets. Where do you think it's going, Richard?
Well, we're coming at it from as a late-stage investor and financial investor. We are seeing the world a little bit differently, and so much is on the come in the VR space. As mentioned, 3D, there have been some challenges, certainly, and not a lot of people are spending time there. We do think VR is very real. At the same time, we're trying to find companies that are, have taken off and are generating solid revenue as a late-stage investor, and we don't see that yet. And of course, that's because Oculus hasn't come out yet, Samsung and Microsoft, and all of it is going to happen fairly soon. We're scouting out a number of companies that are probably less hardware-centric and have interesting software platforms and ancillary services that could be complementary, that when the big boys roll out the hardware, there could be an opportunity. But we're tracking a number of those companies. And we are spending time in AR as well. I think we'll see if there are niche applications that can go into the mainstream maybe a little bit later. But if there are vertical opportunities that can get these companies to be profitable and then figure out how to go mass market, that's something we'd find interesting too.
So these VR service companies, give us an example of one of those.
Well, so let's say I'll draw analogies. Let's take a look at the gaming space broadly. And I realize VR is gaming is just one application of VR, but think about Twitch, on the video streaming side. Think about esports. Think about all these other things around it, where it's not just about the game. It's about all the other things that can become interesting ecosystem companies. And so we're spending similar. You could think akin to that in VR in a lot of different similar areas.
So Alex, what's going to happen? What do you think is out of all these headsets and connecting headsets with streaming portals, etc. What do you think is the first few applications as you guys test with all the different partners? What are some of the things that are developing that are really cool?
Yeah, I think definitely something that's become apparent over the past year is that video is going to play a big role in VR. I remember back in 2013 when I had the opportunity to initially try some of the early prototypes of the Rift, it was almost all about gaming. And you would go to VR meetups and the small conferences that existed at that point, and there was very, very little demoing going on outside of gaming applications. And now you go to some of the events, even an event like Oculus Connect, and at least half the content being demoed is video or video-like experiences. So I think definitely in the early days, video is going to be a big driver of the adoption of VR, especially since you already have so many major brands that are creating video content. We're excited to see what comes of that and hope to play a big role in that as well.
So when you were talking to Scott at the beginning of, you were at the end of the room there, he said, well, what is it about connecting Netflix or Hulu to one of these headsets? What's so exciting about it? What is it?
Yeah, so we're focused on immersive experiences and what people call immersive video or 360 video or VR video. But one of the things you also see on the video side is existing, what we refer to in our company as framed video players like a Netflix or a Hulu or a Vimeo, creating apps for these headsets that allow you to stream their content. And I think that the concept there is just like someone's going to go out and buy a 50-inch television for their home, or just like someone's going to pay $20 for a ticket for an IMAX theater. They'll want to have that virtual kind of experience in their headset.
Virtual IMAX.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I'm sure IMAX is dabbling in the space as well. So we're not focused on that. I'm very curious to see, and Scott was saying the same thing, what kind of adoption those applications get. It's for someone like Netflix, it's not that big of an investment to create a VR app, so it's sort of a no-brainer for them to try it out. So we'll see.
And try it out with all the different sets that are available in the market that are competing.
I mean, basically, make their entire content library accessible.
To anybody.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And then there's a social dynamic to it too. Some of the latest demos from Oculus, for example, are that living room kind of experience where you have a virtual screen in front of you, but you're able to sit there with 4 or 5 of your friends. So you can imagine if you have friends or family dispersed across the country, being able to sit there and watch a movie together as avatars. So,
that's cool.
yeah.
Interesting. So like a Second Life meets Netflix, right?
Yeah.
In your living room. What are you guys seeing? As you said, you made an investment. You may not be able to talk about it, but tell us a little bit about the spaces that you were looking at when you were deciding to make this investment.
Sure. So I can't talk about the particular investment that we made, but we for us within Time Warner, there's a lot of interesting. Well, first I'll take a step back. There's a lot of pockets of VR happening throughout our company. HBO launched a few VR pieces around Game of Thrones. Our colleagues at Turner through Cartoon Network made some VR games around some of their Adult Swim content. Warner Brothers has done some additional kind of marketing and promotional VR content around some of their assets. But it remains to be seen what the killer app will be in the mainstream media world. Will it just stay as a marketing vehicle? Will it be an alternative vehicle for storytelling? Will people, instead of watching a movie in a theater for 2 hours, would they rather put on a headset and engage with the content? Moving from a lean-back experience to more of an interactive game-like experience. Remains to be seen. Would that be mass market? Will that be niche? Hard to say. But then there's also the class of applications in the live VR world. Being at an event, a sports event or a news event, and watching it in your headset live, so you feel like you're there at the event, even though you physically can't be there. Lots of interesting things happening in that space as well.
So I spent a decade in live sports, and interesting thing is that when people watch sports, they want to know every single statistic known to man, and that's why some of the stats and all that is integrated with Variety Gaming. So you're saying maybe perhaps it's a combination of AR and VR, because you may be able to access all of that, maybe play your fantasy league at the same time and watch the event.
Sure. If you had a sporting event on in your headset, it'd be very easy to put scores or highlights or other kind of fantasy information up alongside of it.
And it's the first AR application, that little yellow line. We did Wimbledon Live, so just seeing where the ball actually lands when IBM does that. We know what's actually happening to the sporting event by measuring the event with AR, early AR. So it's kind of going to go projecting forward. So, yeah, I can see how live always leads the new platform adoption. It has led USA Networks into cable adoption, and we did it on broadband, so it was the first broadband events that were live when it was hard to have simultaneous users online. So I believe possibly in VR, AR, that may repeat itself. Do you guys believe in that, or do you think it's more about storytelling and kind of film and television programming?
So I would 100% disagree, just
Oh,
because,
cool.
well, two things. One is technically streaming a live VR experience. Streaming VR to a device is extremely bandwidth intensive, and from the technologies we've looked at, and maybe you guys have seen different, it's the infrastructure that we have, whether it's the last mile on the cable MSO plant or the CDN behind it, or even the home network, we're just not there to deliver the same kinds of immersive VR experiences that the headsets are capable of. And at the same time, and we sort of look at the market as kind of two separate ones for now. One is what we call mobile VR, which is the cell phone in the cardboard or in the carry device, and the other is that plugged-in, tethered one that you'd see a lot of the Oculus demos.
Right.
And certainly for mobile device, again, very, very difficult to actually achieve a really immersive live streaming without significant advances either in compression and/or computational power. And then I think the second is we've seen a lot of experiences that work really well when the headset's on your face for 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes. I was actually surprised my daughter had a Vive headset on for 10 minutes. But I think that people are still kind of getting used to having that on, and so sitting through a 2 hours of a game with the VR headset on, I'm not quite sure that people are there yet. We probably see gaming as more the initial application for a lot of the early adopters.
So interestingly, I have a question for you there. So let's say your video is not streamed through Netflix or Hulu, but you actually have a physical medium delivering a video, like a next generation 4K physical medium. And you have all the VR, AR applications delivered through your internet, through your broadband. All of a sudden, that's not an issue anymore, right? The high bandwidth. So do you conceive of those kinds of applications? So it's really about how can you create an immersive experience, an enhanced experience for someone who's watching high quality video without going into the bandwidth issue, which we hit it up against. I hit it with broadband video, I hit it with mobile video, and now it's the AR, VR. Could you possibly offload the video to something that's a physical medium and just play it simultaneously with the experience?
Yeah, I think that further to what Sim was saying, the technology is going to get to a place where rendering only takes place where you're actually looking, right?
Got it.
You don't need 360 degrees rendered around you at any point in time. So as pupil tracking and compression technologies accompanying that improve, and positional tracking, particularly within mobile VR devices, improves, which perhaps V2 of the Samsung Gear is planned to have that. I think you'll be able to, gray area your way around some of the bandwidth issues. But
Right.
that's still like all very murky waters right now.
Right, and you have to kind of separate the experiences to get to the
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, I think the technology will not only make the bandwidth requirements less, I think there is going to be just more and more bandwidth coming to the last mile with time. So I'm not worried about the bandwidth, but I do agree that, I think the consumer behavior is not quite there yet to watch a 3-hour sporting event. I think it's still watching sports is still a pretty social thing to do. And I don't know how you're going to drink beer with that thing on, but with a straw, maybe.
First things first.
That's something to invest in. How do you drink beer with a headset on? But yeah, I think that's some of the challenges with the live stuff. I think there is, on the short form content, I think, and games, I think there's a clear use case over there. But I'm not worried about the infrastructure pieces. I think, in fact, at Liberty, when we look at VR, we're sort of looking at VR as a platform that is not just enabling an immersive video experience, but also enabling a host of other things on top of it, like a whole new industry around advertising, maybe analytics, personalization, a whole new set of technology requirements that are going to emerge on the infrastructure side to support VR and AR type of platforms. So we haven't made any investments as per se, but we're watching this space very, very carefully. And I think there is definitely some use cases over there, but it's still, the consumer behavior has to sort of adapt to it a little bit more, I think. And part of it would be once, the headsets, maybe the size shrinks a little bit, maybe they become a little bit more easy to wear and easy to sort of just consume the content. I think that would help
More
adoption.
entertaining.
More than, and social, yeah.
And social, okay.
I just wanted to say one quick thing. I agree with a lot of what's being said here. The one thing I don't agree with, though, is the assumption that VR is meant for short form content. It's something I would have imagined originally too, but from being on the grounds, we just did the first ever VR Film Festival. We did a 10-city tour. There was something like 3,000 people across all 10 cities, and it's amazing how long people are willing to spend with these headsets on, as long as the content's of a high enough quality. And I think that the key difference between consuming content, particularly, in this case, video content in VR versus on the web or on mobile, is the lack of distractions. When you're on the web, you've got 10 different browser tabs open. If you're on a mobile device, you have notifications coming up all the time. It's very tough to hold the consumer's attention for a protracted period of time, but you put on a headset and you're completely immersed, it's very easy to lose track of time and watch longer form content. And when I say longer form, we're not at the point yet of having 90-minute films, or I agree, I don't see someone putting a headset on at this point in time and watching a 2 or 3 hour football game. But do I see people putting the headset on for half an hour or 40 minutes at a time to watch a number of good experiences? Definitely.
Well, I wear the funky glasses to watch the 3D animated movies, right? I never thought I would do that on top of my glasses. It's not really comfortable, but it's a better experience at the moment. So we can kind of conclude that cinema is definitely going in that direction. So movies will probably adopt it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the resolution is becoming much
Yeah.
better. I mean, what we saw even 6 months back, I think it's just so much better now.
But is Google in trouble? I mean, Magic Leap, and then we got the Jump platform. Like, why isn't Google in trouble?
I think that the early days of a new platform, investing in content creation tools and enabling user-generated content is the way that you scale. Because Chris Milk, Felix and Paul, Kite and Lightning, these guys are high-level, very professionally produced pieces of 10, 15-minute kind of pieces of content. That'll get burned through pretty quickly with the early enthusiasts that are out there for the non-gaming types of content. I think Jump is a cost-effective, I think it's 15 grand is what they're estimating for cost. 16 GoPros, they stitch together the images from the 360 image being captured. I think is a good way of being able to scale that content base pretty quickly and cost-effectively in a way of, they're masters of what they've seen on YouTube. I'm not saying that every dog and cat video or person doing a video blog is going to necessarily take advantage of this, because I think the reason I made the 3D analogy at the beginning was that I think it was a failed medium largely because it was forced onto types of content that didn't really benefit from it. Being on Pandora, walking around, with a James Cameron movie is one thing. Being in a rom-com just because you can charge $7 more for a ticket price was where you're abusing the medium for where it's not intended. So I think Jump is really helpful on the content creation side to help scale content. I think Magic Leap's a whole separate discussion around augmented reality and how secretive and Florida-based they are. There's not that much I actually know about them.
You're like in another country, another planet there in Silicon Valley,
It
right?
could be amazing. I've seen
Right.
the HoloLens, and that blew my mind, for example.
Right.
And if this is, apparently it's more of an entertainment kind of platform more than the enterprise applications that HoloLens is intended for. But augmented reality, when done right, it really is something impressive.
It's kind of the future in
As
many
in,
senses.
it
yeah.
becomes the next computing platform the way that mobile took us from desktop.
So is this the AR, VR? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg went on record saying this is probably the next platform, and every 10 to 15 years we see one of these, and that's why we spent $2 billion on Oculus, and then Magic Leap raising $590 million today. One of the largest venture capital, bigger than all the unicorn raises, possibly, or close to it. So how is this actually? How do you believe this becomes the next platform in your mind? As you look at the investments, what are you seeing as this next media platform?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, certainly for Facebook, it makes sense. I think the Oculus purchase made a ton of sense because socialization is what they're all about. And it lets you socialize with people, or will let you socialize with people further away in a more intimate fashion. So from a strategic standpoint, I think it's going to be a home run. It's obviously going to take many years for that to play out, but it makes complete sense. I think media consumption, I do think both VR and AR, that is going to, there is an opportunity similar to how 3D was seen as an opportunity, but this one being more real in terms of how you experience media in a more intimate and immersive fashion. I think it makes a lot of sense. From what was mentioned on the AR side, I think the fact that you can wear, from platform perspective, you wear your glasses all the time, you can consume media while you're on the subway, while you're walking down the street. I think that that has a bigger level of immersion. Of course, that's more realistic because I guess that has longer term potential because VR, you can't walk around, or you're going to run into walls, or who knows what the challenge would be. But I do think that media, from a media consumption perspective, it is going to be quite interesting, especially when it is more, you experience something that you otherwise wouldn't. It feels like you're there. It just takes it to a whole other level. So no, I think we definitely see a big opportunity, but it's certainly on the come.
So I think, I mean, for us, when we look at platforms like this, I always think of it as sort of in three phases. So there's the technology part, which typically is ahead of everything else, and that's why we spend a lot of money in developing a lot of this technology. So there's a technology piece. There's obviously a lot of venture capital investment going into any kind of platform development like this. But then the last piece, which is really the consumer. So is the consumer ready for this platform right now? And I think that's the thing that we are sort of keeping track on and sort of looking at how the consumer's behavior is shifting from, like consuming content, it's going from linear to on demand, right? I think those type of shifts are happening, and now
from tune in to on demand to binge watching.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now people are watching shorter form content. People are getting into a lot more immersive content. So I think, yes, I agree, it is sort of the platform of the future, but it does need a lot more than just video and advertising and other like stats and stuff to actually have that consumer behavior change so that it starts getting mass adoption. So things like maybe an integration of IoT, Internet of Things, with an augmented reality is something that would be just a lot more compelling for the consumer to wear something like this and actually, start using it. That's going to drive, I think, the mass adoption.
And see, interesting that you mentioned Internet of Things, because to me that's kind of augmented reality already, right? Because you're getting information attached to things now versus just, online, mobile, et cetera. But then if you think about the big data, no one said big data yet, although we kind of danced around it. What are we going to do with all that data? Well, some of it we're going to actually deliver it in formats that make sense to people in augmented reality. Are you seeing any deals that do just that? Not just stats, but like data that's relevant. Let's say commerce data that's relevant to you as you're purchasing a dress, either online or in real life, or appliance that you want to know more about, or electronic product that you want to know features of, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, so what you're talking about is still science fiction, right?
Really?
It's Minority Report, where you're getting hyper-targeted advertising. The CPMs are going to be through the roof because their conversion is going to be so high because it's so personalized to you. All the data that you're getting from point of sales, every click of this, imagine that exponentially larger with everywhere you're looking being something that's trackable, right? Within a VR headset specifically. AR, I don't know anyone that's doing that level of computation right now or capture. But in terms of the size and the scope of data, every sensory input that you have with the world around you, if that's something that can be tracked, it's on a scale that has not been seen so far. But yes, from what you're saying, from what we're talking about, for the future, and today being Back to the Future Day and everything, I can talk about that.
Sure.
I think it's very compelling for every industry, from commerce to social interaction to human-computer interaction to everything. It's going to change everything. But the data is going to be immense. You're absolutely right.
But none of the data companies are playing around with this at the moment, right?
Yeah, we've seen demos where someone will be looking at a scene, and say 1,000 people looked at it. We could compute heat maps about exactly, are people looking at this person, are people looking at that person. You could replicate those kinds of things in the lab if you put cameras on people, but it's a little bit cumbersome. It's very interesting feedback for content company to know not only did this person watch this film, but this is really where they were paying attention, this is where they were gazing, this is where they were not. You just don't get that kind of information from Nielsen or from other analytics companies. So it's interesting how that will feed back to us as content creators. Hard to say, but it's certainly another dimension of data that you get back from VR and AR that we just didn't have before.
And I think that's really important to media companies, because looking at subscriptions and advertising revenue models for millions of years, right, as far as we go back to media inventions, we really never had the consumer commerce connected to media viewing in a way that media company can benefit from it. Yet, it's sparking up consumer commerce, on our planet. So don't you think that at some point, this AR, VR capabilities will allow media to get a piece of the commerce revenue, which I think is the holy grail?
I'm not so convinced on that point.
No?
But I think we have a lot of great data coming back now from online viewing or over-the-top viewing or mobile viewing. Right? You can match a viewer online with their credit card data and what stores they go to and sometimes what TV shows they watch. There's a lot of data you can get back. Connecting with VR, AR doesn't give you that much incremental data other than knowing where they're looking.
Got it.
So there are always great commerce opportunities in terms of ad sales for
Sure.
content, or maybe upselling them to a different content package. But I don't know if it's that transformative on the VR, AR side. VR, AR is a hard problem. Doing all the data analytics of targeted advertising, that's a whole different discussion and a whole different set of.
And that gets better.
And I think that'll
And therefore
continue.
higher CPMs, right? Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Right. Maybe better subscription revenue conversions, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. Improving on the P&L as it is.
Yes.
Possibly. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I think media companies have gotten somewhat, I would say, issues with their P&L as these new platforms develop, but they also have opportunities. And that's probably why some of these investments are made in the future, opportunities for. So what do you see as the largest driver of potential P&L for media companies? Let's start with those because we have a lot of strategics from different forms of media here. Anybody wants to? Yeah, you want to talk about those? Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to say, sort of on the P&L side, Scott, I definitely hear what you're saying about the possibilities around advertising in AR and VR and how it's not dramatically different on the data collection side. What I'm really curious to see is on the brand recall side, how much more impactful advertising can be in VR and AR.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer yet, but I'd be very curious if some of the big agencies dive into this and put out studies, because I do think, you show me a car commercial on YouTube, for example, or on television, I might have stepped out of the room, but you put a VR headset on and you're cruising down the PCH in the new Lexus or whatever, I'm going to remember that for a few days on end and be talking to my friends about that. So to me, that's potentially the exciting possibility around advertising in VR. So I do personally think there's a huge opportunity for advertising in VR, but in order to support an advertising ecosystem, you need a sizable audience, which VR is not going to have for the next couple of years. So I think in the near term, you're more likely to see transactional and subscription-based monetization.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's about the connectivity layer. So, we obviously there is content that we host. We can host. We have VOD platforms where we can have a separate offering for VR content. But I think the bigger P&L piece for us is really maybe a different quality of service, different SLA for our consumers, which requires a much better, higher quality bandwidth connection for this type of content. And then there's when you look at VR and AR and you start sort of thinking of Twitch, then it's not just sort of one-way downstream data, it's sort of data bidirectional. So I think those things are interesting for us. There might be some opportunities for us to monetize VR, AR even for our business customers. As we have a huge opportunity with business customers. We've largely been selling bandwidth to them, but training and other applications that can enhance the business's agility and stuff, I think is something that, again, there could be use cases there.
Quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, on the P&L side, I would say that, so we're a financial investor, we do have media assets as well, but I don't think we look at VR more as from a P&L standpoint. I mean, think about new media consumption platforms like, well, not new anymore, YouTube or Netflix and all these others. They're driving massive engagement and time usage and subscribers. They're not making any money or nominal money despite, well, they're making a lot of revenue, but not a lot of profits. And so I don't think those are seen as, bad investments or acquisitions or public stock values. I would think media companies, and certainly from a financial standpoint, as we view it as investors, that this is going to be the future. People are going to flock there. They may be lost leaders for a long, long time, But then as it gets to that critical mass, then, Netflix is valued, fairly richly in the markets. Can there be a similar type of platform on the VR side? I don't believe media companies are focused on near-term profits or even medium-term profits. Is this going to be the future? And we need to participate in that, and we'll figure out profits somewhere down the road.
So let me talk about just based on what you just said on the connectivity to video with this new platform and the ability to generate revenue of that. So years ago, I ran a KPMG digital media incubator, and we incubated a company called Catch TV, where you can show mark content on television and go to the set of links to content or ads related to that. And we did a lot of consumer research at the time, and it showed that if someone clicked on an ad that was playing on television and they asked for information on it, they were down to like maybe doing a test drive of that car and possibly purchasing it. That's how interested they were in that BMW ad. But then with social television, launched a few of those in my career, we were trying to figure out maybe we'll connect consumers on that second screen, right? So it's no longer all coming in through the television network. We tried all the apps around. We've tried all of those, and then we tried it on your mobile phone and tablets. Now you can actually connect that consumer, get more data, sell them more stuff, possibly even commerce. This is where the question came from, struggling for 20 years with this. Now, would VR, AR, what Alex was saying earlier, would it make that process, that connection between interactive content and linear content, whether it's live or on demand, any better for us in terms of monetizing it and creating business models that work for media companies?
I mean, I think there's certainly going to be more interesting advertising opportunities around the immersive experience and potentially higher levels of brand recall and engagement. The other side of it is, and obviously every media company thinks about the risk of trading off too much in advertising, losing subscription revenues. We still have print businesses that sell magazine subscriptions, and this is a huge challenge. And every time a new platform comes out, mobile for example, there is often an opportunity to kind of upsell the exact same content in a new format. So if you look at free Hulu on your PC or laptop, but you have to pay a subscription fee in order to view it on your mobile device or on your connected TV. I think as media companies, we probably look at VR similarly in that we will hopefully be able to take either the same content or new made for VR content, and as long as it's packaged and experienced in a higher quality way through a VR headset, what was once purely ad supported might fall under either a VOD model or a subscription model for those types of experiences.
Yeah, I think it's still very early to tell. I mean, VR is still, there's not a million devices out there yet that could view these things. So, will it be ad supported? Will it be just marketing driven to buy something else? Will people pay for VR content in and of itself as an incremental fee above whatever linear television or theatrical or other piece of content? It's hard to tell now. I think a lot of people are experimenting. How it affects our P&L, very early to say. But then I think there's also the open question of, at least for a media company, is VR going to be or AR going to be a new medium and a new kind of content that we produce? Who knows? Who knows how to produce it? Who knows what the audience would be, and will they actually pay for it? But certainly, all things worth experimenting. As our new fields, new media formats come out, everyone does a lot of experimenting. Yeah, I think I've been told when film industry first ramped up a long time ago, some of the first films were they put a camera in front of a Broadway stage or an opera, and that was the film. Or when TV came out, it was just the same as the radio shows, in that kind of format. We don't really know what the new format's going to be. Hopefully, at some point, at least for the media companies or others, it'll monetize at some point. But it's very early days.
So the big question, not the alphabet question, but how does Apple come into this?
So they already have patents, I think, since 2008 on or maybe 2013, I'm forgetting, on the headset of their own. Which is public domain. You can find out about that. And they also bought a company, was it Mateo? I think they bought, which was an Israeli AR company, I think. Okay, I got everything wrong. Yeah, potato, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or Apple, yeah. So typically what those guys have done, the technology will be developed, they'll come make it more ergonomically beautiful. They'll Johnny Ive it, right? To make it into a position where they'll make it sexy. Content creators will, at that point, the system will, the platform will be mature enough that they'll just make it better. That's what I envisage happening here. They've already got their fingers in a lot of pies with diversification around cars and other new categories that they're moving into now. But that's where I stand on it. I think that Apple will come in once we've seen the first wave of headsets, second wave of headsets already go out.
Yeah, we could have gone into so many directions on this panel with simulators and aviation and education and car manufacturing, et cetera, labs. We were trying to stay on point with media and digital media for the sake of our audience, but I think the world may shift with these technologies. I'm going to take a question from the audience. Go ahead.
Alex, I was introduced to Video at the Kaleidoscope Film Festival on Brooklyn Way, and I was very impressed with both your platform and your people. So well played. My question is, will I have the opportunity as a marketer to buy a preferred position on the carousel, so that when the consumer puts on the headset and begins navigating through video, my experience is going to show up front and center?
Yeah, it's a good question, and good to see you again. It's not something we're currently doing. We've just started dabbling in some more manual curation of content, and I guess the next step beyond that would be potentially looking at paid positioning of content and premium content. Right now, most of the ways we surface content is algorithmically based. But yeah, it's something we'll definitely look at and consider.
Tell us about that, the algorithmically based surfacing of content.
It's really like nothing special. I think the way we're surfacing content's not dramatically different from how guys like YouTube and Vimeo have been surfacing content for quite some time now. And I think that's, for us too, when we thought about how to approach immersive video distribution, there's some things that are dramatically different, but there's some things that there was no need to reinvent the wheel. Online videos already presented a number of models that work well for consumption and discovery.
Got it. Any more questions from the audience?
Sonny, so just to put this in context for I think everybody in the audience, certainly for myself, we're talking a lot about VR, AR, obviously. You mentioned YouTube and Jump and current YouTube publishers, correct? Are we considering or lumping immersive 360 video in with VR for the sake of this conversation?
So that's a very good, I think people group VR and AR together just as much as they do versions of 360 video and VR. So I think, let me be clear, 360 video, the kind that's viewable in a Samsung Gear or a Google Cardboard. I even differentiate between those two because the Cardboard viewing experience with light leakage, et cetera, is very different to what you have with the Gear. And Gear actually has sensors within it as well. So when I was saying that the Jump platform, I was using that as an example of where it's headed to expand content creation from a user-generated perspective. There's plenty of professionally produced content on YouTube that the MCNs have enabled these days. We're still a ways away from having that kind of MCN model onto a series of user-generated content creators for VR, because the eyeballs don't exist, the headsets don't exist, the ecosystem doesn't exist yet. But the analogy I was making with Jump was around user-generated content scalability.
What do you guys think about faster adoption on even mobile without a headset, whether it's Cardboard, Gear, or anything else, with immersive 360 content?
I'm sorry, could you specify? You mean like the kind of 360 video you have in your Facebook feed?
About the market not really taking off. I mean, it's the cart and the horse, right? It's content and headsets, but there's a lot of content that's available right now in 360, even on mobile devices through YouTube's native app. Cross-platform desktop as well, that doesn't require a headset. I haven't heard so far this week a lot of talk about the size and potential of that market.
Of just the 360 video market?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Facebook has been pushing this very hard, right? They announced that 360 video they'll support natively in the feed, and they certainly have the power to push as much 360 video as they want. and YouTube supports it in their player too. So I think there will be a big push in this, and I think people see 360 video as kind of the gateway or top of funnel to get people further down to finally buy a headset and watch more immersive video.
From an investment standpoint, are you generally sitting back and waiting for Facebook and I guess YouTube and the 360 initiative to?
Do you have a 360 deal? Is that your company?
We produce 360 content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you raising money?
We are. Yeah.
Are you investing in these deals? Let's just cut to the chase, so we can go on to the next question.
Well, no, we cut him off. Come talk to. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit
Yeah,
after
there you
that to
go.
learn more. Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm looking forward to hearing more.
So, Mariana, you kind of glossed over,
Thank you.
over the market size, and I'm quite curious to hear from the panel because there's disparities between DigiCapital, which has a very aggressive, very bullish, especially content market. I would say specifically AR, VR, entertainment content. So it's very difficult to act on information when you're an investor, especially with an emerging market like this. And we've seen in the past, very quick adoptions from different types of devices. So especially the corporates, where do you stand? What do you think the market's going to look like in 2020? Is it a $10 billion content market, or is it a $1 billion? That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Content.
Yeah.
They don't invest in content. Do you invest in content? No?
No, I'm talking, but my question.
I'm just asking
how
them.
big will the content market?
But maybe they do.
DigiCapital says the market for VR in 2020, just VR, will be $30 billion.
Right.
And it's zero.
An AR 120. Yeah, I got it.
So of that, about $10 billion in his estimate is
Content. Do you guys invest in content? How do you fund content, if at all?
So,
Okay, right. No, you take it. Take it.
You
so I
take
mean,
it.
we'll fund content enablers primarily. So we like to kind of picks and shovels investments. So actually, both of us are investors in a recently announced deal called 8i. And I think VCs generally don't like to invest in something that looks and feels like a next generation Hollywood studio. That being said, there have been a number of very well capitalized VR companies that are essentially spending a lot of that money to produce content because frankly there isn't a lot of great content out there for all the people with the new headsets, whether they buy them this winter, next spring, next winter, for them to enjoy. But going back to your other question, I think about market size, I mean, I used to help put those reports together, and I probably never pay attention to the scale of the numbers or the time scale. The people, I mean, at the end of the day, I think other than understanding whether or not we think it's a big transformative market, which I think at least everyone on this panel would agree with, that VR certainly has the promise and potential of being highly disruptive and massive from an investable category. I don't know that we're spending a ton of time thinking about whether that's $10 billion in 2017 or $30 billion in 2020.
Yeah, same thing with us. I think we think of VR and AR as really just a transformational shift in just the consumer behavior, how they're consuming content. But I also don't think it's a $1 billion market. I think it's a much larger market than that. There is just a lot more opportunities to monetize, and it is down the road. But yeah, whether it's 20 or 30, I think it's big enough. The DigiCap guys, they think that AR is much bigger. I subscribe to that as well. I think that the number of possibilities with AR is just a lot more.
Is that on the enterprise side? Do you think I hear a lot about enterprise AR? Training,
Oh, yeah. It's not their
Well, I think it's.
The question was about entertainment.
So we look at these estimates too. We also compare them to the 5 other banks that have put together numbers. I mean, to Sim's point, it looks big, and these companies are so early right now. So whether it was $1 billion market or a $10 billion market, when you're looking at evaluation of these companies, it doesn't really matter.
So that was a good question, I think, because usually with the new platform, some of the media companies or new technology companies set up a fund to fund new projects that would drive what Ankur's talking about, consumer adoption. Have you seen any of those with any of the investments that you're looking at?
Sorry, say it again.
Some of the new digital media companies set up a fund to actually fund content projects to get the platform adoptions. Have you seen any of those?
Yeah.
Who's put
I mean,
these together?
the headset guys are doing it, right? Oculus is the biggest provider of content for games and Hollywood.
And are they giving people some sort of a development budget to develop
Yeah,
content?
yeah, it's all advances against royalties and
Okay.
traditional. That's much more of like a film financy kind of
It is.
structured kind of.
Okay. And how big is that
YouTube
fund?
did.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, YouTube also
the
gave,
jumpstart
so a lot of times,
production.
the Oculus is actually giving grants the way that YouTube did as well,
Ah,
with its
okay.
channel grants at the beginning.
Right.
Well, wasn't there was a fund set up for Magic Leap also, I think,
Okay.
to just invest in companies developing apps for Magic
For the
Leap, right?
ecosystem?
For the ecosystem, yeah.
So
So I don't think
applications.
it's, yeah, I think
Okay.
it's absolutely, that's what'll happen, it is started already.
It's always going to be the hardware. To sell the hardware, you're going to have to be financing content, right? It was
Yeah.
like Halo
Intel
sold the
did it
Xbox, not the other way
forever,
around.
right?
So
Yeah.
having that kind of a killer experience, that's what
Yeah.
they're all trying to fund right now with Oculus Story Studio and Jason Rubin's Oculus Studios, funding a bunch of the gaming companies as well. So.
Is that where you were leading to? Who would fund the content? I like that question. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead, Arthur.
Hi. So my startup concentrates on empowering creation of live content, and it has nothing to do with VR or AR at this point, but we enable people to create content on the fly, make it as easy as webcam or as complicated as they wanted to get with multiple cameras and multiple producers, switchboards. My question to you, to the panel actually, is we're raising money, and is there an interest in the companies like us at this point, who is not, so we're not VR AR ready, but what we do produce is socially engaged live interactions.
Like on the way to AR, VR, fully immersive content.
Our platform is a video bidirectional platform that has social component behind it. So it's a starting point of where I think every discussion has been going in the last few days of we want to get to socially engaging VR AR experience. We're not there yet technically, but we've built a platform to get us to get the people going that direction.
So it's a socially engaging video experience platform. So like he was talking about 360 video. This one is bi-directional video engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you. I think that would be something of interest for us. Is this professionally produced stuff, or is this sort of user-generated
It can go
content?
as simple as a cell phone webcam to
Okay.
professional.
Yeah, I'm happy. Let's definitely talk.
So these are all the companies on the way to AR, VR. Any other companies in need of funding that want to tell us about it? No, I'm just kidding. I love these questions. These are the real questions. Go ahead.
I have a question around return on investment. So advertising in terms of the AR and VR space is kind of unclear right now. How it's going to work, how it's going to be implemented. To what degree does that factor into how you look at your investments? And the other side of the question as well comes to content in relation to advertising.
Wow.
Where would you say are the demographic groups or production groups that are going to be more reliable from a content production perspective in relation to VR? So bigger studios, indie groups, indie production houses, where is that going to come from and how does that relate to advertising?
The content ecosystem ad-supported, right? How is that going to work here?
I think it's early to start thinking about ad support for VR. As someone mentioned earlier, advertising only works until you start having massive scale. 10 million monthly actives, 100 million monthly actives. But it's going to take a while for VR to get there. So, but once it does get there, there'll be the normal ad tech ecosystem developing. I'm sure there'll be direct sold, and then there'll be ad networks, and then there'll be RTB, and then they'll have SSPs, and I'm sure that'll all happen. And branded content first. But in terms of the content studios, who's producing the content? Earlier we mentioned Felix and Paul,
Verse.
Kite and Lightning, Verse, John Studios. These are all guys doing fantastic early VR work. They're small shops. Some of them came out of the traditional film world. Some of them came out of VFX or the gaming world. And I think those guys will continue to get bigger, and there'll probably be a whole lot more coming behind them.
So like a multi-channel or digital studio for VR, AR type company, hybrid maybe.
Panel, do you expect any type of government help that might advance VR from NASA or DARPA or anything that from that side, even the political side that may want to use VR for cybersecurity? Do you see that anything on that side maybe making a jump even before you get to the economy of the advertising or the entertainment side that may help push VR to another level?
I mean, I was going to say, I've certainly heard of companies that are going after military funding for things like training and simulations. And that's an interesting kind of parallel market, very similar to the video game world. And then there's, countries like Canada, which have very significant R&D tax credits around things like gaming, which we're also starting to see in new technologies like VR as well.
Similarly, so we've been monitoring the computer vision expertise coming out of Israel. A lot of the people going through military training over there, this is a lot of the computer vision technology being used in AR right now, i.e. to recognize what you're looking at and impose an overlay on top of that. That's very complex kind of stuff. So a bunch of the computer vision PhDs that we've been talking to get, to boost our own expertise at the fund, Israel's been doing a phenomenal job of that. And it's not, VR AR isn't something new over there. It's just like a lot of the applications of it now are becoming something new to discuss.
Michael, I think you're the last question today, so make it a good one.
So just more of an announcement than a question, because it was too late to make the book and it's relevant here. Halsey Miner is at the show today. We were showing in the booth the Voxel System for Content Creation yesterday. Today at noon, he's sponsoring the lunch, talking for a few minutes, and then he's going to be demoing the rest of the afternoon the first live VR 360 camera.
Cool.
And kind of like a broadcast, right?
Broadcast live, basically put it on the headset, and you basically see the entire room that you're in.
That's what we were talking about earlier with live events, right?
Awesome.
How long is this broadcast going to last?
It'll be ongoing in the afternoon.
Oh, wow, cool. Cool. Any other, so maybe as we close out the panel, because we have all these amazing investors with amazing visions described so far as to what's going on in this interesting space, what are some of the most exciting things that you're taking away from the space at the moment that you feel is really going to be a game changer with what you do?
Oh boy. Some of the AR stuff I've seen is very, very impressive and very transformational. So it's still very early days, but how that relates to gaming as well as media, I think will be incredible, and we'll see some fantastic
That's what I'm hoping for as well. Okay, let's see. Hear from Sim.
So the experience of seeing my 9-year-old daughter put a VR headset on for the first time and immediately getting it, and me physically not being able to take it off her after 10 minutes. We are probably a little bit more jaded as people that see technology all the time and see the evolution. But I'm actually very jealous of her because that was her very first experience, and it was such a profound one.
Amazing.
It's going to be an expensive holiday season for me.
So the babies will be born with these little VR headsets, straight out. That's how we'll train them to talk. Okay. Sonny, have a vision.
Yeah, for me, it's as a fan, actually, from a consumer perspective, as a lifelong gamer, and as a fund that has strength in investing in games. I cannot wait for that additive, incremental immersion that's going to occur from actually, taking part of the games that I'm looking forward to playing and investing in.
Yeah, and always, I think games were sort of leading the way with this, but now long-form, professionally produced content is kind of getting in there. With
interactive CGI entertainment. Yeah. I think James Cameron said it when people asked him about the recent wave of VR expansion. He's like, immersive fantasy worlds that exist, they're called games. So I think that'll be a launch pad to start from, especially for early adopters who are willing to spend the money on a PC upgrade and hardware as well.
But all entertainment needs that interactivity at some point,
sure.
Right? We've been waiting for it for a while. Okay, so Richard?
I was going to say the same thing, gaming. It's just not clearly the killer app within VR. I've had some great experiences using, playing games within VR. I'm excited to see the next generation for sure.
And it's the entertainment category that keeps growing globally, right? So no-brainer, really exciting. Alex?
Yeah, I mentioned before, we just wrapped up the first ever VR Film Festival. We went through 10 cities in North America, and almost like what Sim was just saying, it never gets old seeing people try out VR for the first time. It's hard not to remain excited and confident about this space when you see the reaction people have to this medium, and also see some of the fantastically inventive content that folks are already putting out there.
And Ankar?
Yeah, for me, I think, of course, the content is definitely interesting. I think I'm very eager to see how the headsets eventually shape up and how they eventually become cool and sexy, really. Because the experience is very good. It's just that the content experience is good, but it's so hard to sort of put that thing on for a long time.
Yeah, it's going to be
So
like a
I-
neuromancer.
I like
integrated in you.
I would love to watch a sporting content, sporting event on VR, sort of a mode. But it's just, I'd love to have a much better headset to do that. So yeah, I'm sort of excited to see that progress and see. Hopefully.
Yeah, Sonny has another comment once you said that.
Just one more quick comment. I know we're wrapping up, but for those folks that are interested in learning more, a lot of people are probably new to this space as well because the space is so new. Latest companies getting funded, who's playing in this space, local community meetups throughout California and internationally as well. You guys, everyone here should be regularly reading Upload VR as a news resource to come up to speed on pretty much everything. That's what I read every morning. So just
And also,
an FYI.
Road to VR is also
Road to
very
VR.
good, and also actually a locally based media outlet, VR Scout, which covers a lot of the 360 video content side. They're doing great stuff as well.
So Product Hunt is no longer the most interesting piece of news in my inbox.
It's horizontal. We're talking about VR here, so it's
All right.
specific to VR.
So, but I found some great VR suggestions. That's my
There are,
addition
of
on
course.
Product Hunt.
Yeah, yeah.
To see if you want interesting, cool
Yeah,
things
VR.
and apps. Well, thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our wonderful audience. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank
Be
you.
immersed. Thank you.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Good to reconnect, my man.
Good seeing
Let's
you.
make sure.